In a dangerous escalation, Donald Trump has just deployed 700 Marines to Los Angeles, joining the 2,000 National Guard troops that he already federalized against the explicit objections of California Governor Gavin Newsom and LA Mayor Karen Bass. This marks the first time in some 60 years that a president has deployed the National Guard without a governor's request, a point that I asked Governor Newsom about in our latest interview. The last time a president federalized the National Guard in opposition to a state's governor was in 1963 when JFK did it in opposition to George Wallace in an attempt to integrate the University of Alabama. So that was a moment where the president stepped up to protect civil rights and expand civil rights. Now Donald Trump is doing the exact opposite. And so you're in a situation where you are in direct conflict to history here, because Donald Trump is now doing it to try and contract rights among citizens in the state. And so what's your reaction to the fact that this is the polar opposite of something that JFK did, that went down in the history books as a moment where he used his power for good to expand civil rights, and now Donald Trump is doing it in opposition to you to contract them?
Yeah, I mean, as I say, it's unconstitutional, it's illegal, it's immoral. We've deployed the National Guard on multiple occasions in the past. We have National Guard down at the border, mission tasked to appropriately address the issue of fentanyl interdiction, drug interdiction, working in partnership with Border Patrol, have been for years and years and years. Thousands were deployed here after the fires and during the midst of the fires to help support public safety. We used thousands of our National Guard to address the issue of public safety during the George Floyd riots. The issue of the National Guard being deployed appropriately is under the jurisdiction of governors, not the President of the United States. And to your point, that he's using this to create division, he's using this to divide this nation, he's using this in a way knowingly that puts people's lives at risk so he can escalate the rhetoric, escalate his effort to continue to degrade these are constitutional protections, those fundamental protections that we have frankly taken advantage, granted of for decades and decades, is extraordinary, and it's a deep point of contrast, certainly, to a real president, John F. Kennedy.
Let me be crystal clear about what's happening here. This is exactly what Trump wants. This escalation, this chaos, this confrontation, it is all by design. And before we get into the constitutional crisis that he's manufacturing, consider why he needs this distraction so badly. His second term has been an unmitigated disaster since day one. His manufacturing golden age has produced a measly net gain of about 9,000 jobs since January, hardly the boom that he's promised. His tariff wars have crashed the markets, with every gain in the markets since his election having been wiped out. His 90 deals in 90 days promise has produced exactly one preliminary trade agreement with the UK, who, by the way, we have a trade surplus with. His administration is facing nationwide injunctions from judges across the political spectrum, including ones who he himself appointed. And on top of all of that, manufacturing has been contracting for multiple consecutive months. This is now the second Trump presidency where he's promised a manufacturing renaissance and delivered a contraction instead. So what does a failing president do when his economic agenda is collapsing? He creates a crisis. He manufactures conflict. He sends in the troops. And this isn't Trump's first rodeo with using or threatening to use armed forces against American citizens. Here's Mark Esper back in 2022, Trump's former Secretary of Defense, recounting what Trump attempted to do during his first term.
We're at a different spot now. He's going to finally give a direct order to deploy paratroopers into the streets of Washington, D.C., and I'm thinking with weapons and bayonets. And this would be horrible.
What specifically was he suggesting that the U.S. military should do to these protesters?
He says, can't you just shoot them? Just shoot them in the legs or something. And he's suggesting that that's what we should do, that we should bring in the troops and shoot the protesters.
The commander-in-chief was suggesting that the U.S. military shoot protesters.
Yes, in the streets
American
of our
protesters.
nation's capital. That's right. Shocking.
We have seen in other countries a government use their military to shoot protesters.
Right.
What kind of governments are those?
Well, those are banana republics, right, or authoritarian regimes.
And while Trump didn't invoke the Insurrection Act during his first term, while campaigning for his second term, he suggested that that would change. He told an audience in Iowa back in 2023 that he was prevented from using the military to suppress violence in cities and states during his first term, and said that if the issue came up again in his second term, quote, "I'm not waiting." And now, just over 100 days into his second term, the likelihood that he does exactly that becomes higher and higher by the day. I asked Governor Newsom whether there was a concern about this issue in particular of him invoking the Insurrection Act. Here's what he had to say. Do you have a concern that he will ramp up his threats from just federalizing the National Guard to invoking the Insurrection Act if this isn't dealt with?
Of course. I mean, what more evidence do we need of the authoritarian tendencies? It's not even tendencies now, actions of this president. This is complete lawlessness. Threatening impeachment of judges that disagree with him, going after knowledge broadly, the cultural purge, institutions of higher learning. It's the conveyor belt for talent. It's the reason this country is so is successful as it is. He's coming after books and knowledge. He's rewriting history, censoring historical facts. I mean, Hexic's so weak, he can't even allow the kids at West Point to read books from, Toni Morrison.
Yeah.
He's I mean, it's a serious, serious moment in America, and we've got to assert ourselves, and we are asserting ourselves, and we're just not going to stand for this.
I posed the same question to Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass. Here's what she had to say. Well, do you have any concern that the end game might be the invocation of the Insurrection Act, for example?
I'm concerned about everything. And I think the biggest concern that we have is the uncertainty, not knowing what is next, not knowing what the goals are, not knowing what the trajectory is. Where are we going with this?
And so the writing is on the wall here. Everyone can see it. The governor, the mayor, the citizens. Donald Trump is expressly trying to inflame tensions by mobilizing our military against us because he wants things to get worse, not better, so that he can use that as a pretense to be able to invoke the Insurrection Act and consolidate even more power in the executive branch for himself. This has nothing to do with keeping Angelenos safe, or Californians safe, or Americans safe, and everything to do with making one person, Donald Trump, even more powerful. What we're witnessing isn't just about Los Angeles. I don't know how much clearer I can make it in saying that if Donald Trump is able to do this in LA, it's not because of some specific gripe solely with Los Angeles. It's because this city is a test case for the rest of the country. Trump isn't looking to be an autocrat only in the eyes of Californians. Authoritarians don't generally impose limits to their own power. He wants to do it everywhere. It's easy to start in Los Angeles because it's a big blue bastion in a big blue state, and so he'll be able to easily politicize this, but what starts here will not end here. The rest of the country stays silent at their own peril because this is entirely about achieving success here expressly to be able to export this strategy to the rest of the country. Federalizing the National Guard should be a measure of last resort, but for Trump, it's not a last resort. It is a first option. It's a way to change the subject from his failing economic agenda. It's a way to create the kind of confrontational imagery that feeds his base while horrifying normal Americans. It's a way to test how far he can push presidential authority before someone steps in to stop him. What we are watching in Los Angeles isn't about immigration enforcement or public safety. This is about a failing president who needs chaos to distract from his failures. It's about a man who has learned that he can abuse federal authority with impunity so long as he does it quickly and wraps it in law and order rhetoric. And frankly, the escalation in Los Angeles is working exactly as Trump has intended. Instead of talking about his economic failures, his tariff disasters, his complete inability to deliver on any of his promises, we now have to talk about troops in the streets. And just to take you behind the curtain for a moment, this is especially difficult for me to reconcile because I'm aware of what he's doing. I'm aware that this is a distraction. But the distraction is also so dangerous that I'm not able to ignore it, nor do I think that we should ignore it. So it's a difficult process because I both know that he wants us to fall for it, and it would be irresponsible not to. But what Trump isn't taking into account is that Americans can see through all of this. Even as we talk about this worsening crisis in Los Angeles, Americans can see that he is manufacturing this crisis expressly to distract us from his incompetence. They can see that he's willing to tear apart constitutional government to serve his political needs. And they can see that a president who threatens to arrest governors, for example, for disagreeing with him is not a president who believes in democracy. The chaos in LA isn't a bug in Trump's system, it's a feature. Before you go, if you enjoyed this content and you want to see more and support independent media, please subscribe to this channel. The subscribe button will be right here on the screen. But second, the reality is that we are now in a political environment where this administration can lean on any of the social media platforms to suppress certain voices if they don't like critical coverage. That means my longevity here is in the hands of a few tech billionaires who are already making it clear that they are willing to cater to this administration. To that end, Signing up for my newsletter is a way for me to reach you directly if that ever becomes necessary. I'll put the link right here on the screen as well, so please sign up. It's free, but there's also an option to do a paid subscription if you'd like to support me and my team. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching.